Welcome back to Learn Astrology with Mary. My name's Mary English. You can find me at www.maryenglish.com, maryenglish.co.uk and UK Astrologer. Hello. Before I start, I just want to tell you something really funny. So I have a little electric motorbike and I drove it down to a shopping street that's near to where I live to take 3 items I had in the house to the charity shop. Down that particular road, I think there's 6 charity shops. It's pretty well covered by charity shops. Got there, parked my bike, and I thought, I'll just walk to wherever the nearest shop is. And I thought, I'll take it to this particular charity shop. So I walked through the door. I've got 3 items in my hand, in a little bag. I got the middle bag, and I walked in. I had... I'll tell you about 3 items. So I walk up to the counter and there's the lady sitting there. And I don't like to dump stuff on the floor. I always like to tell the member of staff that I'm bringing things in case there's something they might not want. So I go up to the counter and I speak to the young lady that's sitting there. And I said, I've got a thermos flask, and I handed it to her. I said, I've got some Lego pieces. And they're all in there. It's all complete. There's nothing missing. And this is a butterfly house. So this is from the butterfly proving that I did last year. I have grown some other butterflies. I don't know what you would call it. Hatched some butterfly pupae in there, but I'm probably not going to do it again because it's quite time consuming. I've got other things. Anyway, so I'm standing there just handing these things to this lady and just telling her what they are. And obviously you could see what the thermos flask was, and it wasn't difficult to work out the Lego thing, but I explained that this was a butterfly cage. And as I was talking to her, she said to me, excuse me. And I said, yes. She said, is your name Mary English? And I went, yes. And she said, I've just been listening to you on Spotify. And I went, oh, wow, have you? And she said, I was thinking of, I've just found out my exact birth time from my father, and I now know what time I was born, because don't forget, in the UK, it's really rare for people to even know what time they're born, especially if their mother was unconscious or something when they gave birth. Nothing's written down anyway. Anyway, she'd got in contact with a relative, her dad, and he'd told her what time she was born. She was really excited now because she'd been listening to the podcast. And I've obviously been waffling on about you need a birth time. She found it now and she said she'd like to come for a reading. So I said, well, hold on a minute, I'll just run to my bike and I'll get my business card. I gave it to her and I gave her the details and where I live, etc. But it was funny that this particular lady, she doesn't know what I look like because there's no pictures on the podcast. You won't have a clue what I look like. I'm 5.5 tall, and I have, at the moment, my hair is still blonde, even though I'm 64. It hasn't gone grey just yet, and it's sort of shoulder length. But other than that, there's no way of knowing what I look like, and I'm not bothered that you don't know what I look like. But this was so funny that this woman knew what I sounded like. I said, oh, how many episodes did you listen to? And she told me the number that she got. I was like, oh, you've obviously listened to my voice more than once. So there you go. I got identified by my voice. What was the chances of that? I thought that made my day. Now, I've got some new students at the moment. Love having new students, love teaching astrology. I don't teach astrology, I help people learn. There's a big difference to teaching. I'm not stood there in front of a blackboard writing stuff. I go, you will learn this. When I work with students that want to learn astrology, I find out via their chart, obviously, what's the best way for them to learn. And so I encourage the way that they want to learn. Unless they've got no idea at all how to learn, then I'll probably do a bit more teaching. But the majority of the time, I'm helping you and my students learn astrology. So it's an interesting question that came up. And since the student concerned is a Virgo and it isn't sufficient to blather about something, you have to give specific details, and they'd asked me about something that's on the astro.com website, charts when you create them. Now, I do know what it is they were talking about, but I've never covered it in a podcast, so I thought, well, there we go, let's cover this today, and I can send them over here. So these particular, one student in particular, but I've got another one at the moment who would probably enjoy knowing about this, so off we go. Their question was, in the grid that's the bottom of an astro.com chart, bottom right hand side is an aspect grid. And in that grid, there are the colours black, green, blue, and red. Black, green, blue, and red. And they indicate particular aspects. Now, I don't use bisequentrate. I only use, for myself, my own purposes, unless I'm feeling completely bored, I only use squares, trines, sextiles, oppositions, maybe a bit of inconjunct here and there, and conjunctions and oppositions. That's all I use as far as aspects go. I don't do biquintiles or flum-dum-dials or any of those. But they are listed in that aspect grid because it's all computerized. Fine. What's also in there, and I will use for today's demonstration, I'm going to be using Queen Elizabeth II's birth chart. So I'm going to zoom in. I'll just do that now. And I'll put this onto the podcast so that you'll be able to see it. That's her aspect grid. And we're going to go through the things that this particular student had asked about, which I don't cover because, well, I'll tell you for why I don't really think it's that important, but that's beside the point. Some astrologers do, and it is a useful thing to know. It won't make an awful lot of difference to you learning astrology. This is something that generally comes much later down the line, and you might even read it in a book and go, what the flipping heck does that mean? Now, in listen to me now, Queen Elizabeth's birth chart grid, under the moon line, so it goes Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, blah, 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 all the way down the outside of the triangle of the aspect grid. The second inverted commas planet, because we know the moon isn't a planet, but there we go. We've got Moon, Trine, Mercury, and then we've got Moon, opposition, Mars. And in the boxes of the trine and the opposition and all the other little boxes, you'll see a set of numbers, and you'll see two repeating initials that repeat in quite a lot of her boxes, which you will possibly have in your chart as well. So go have a look, and you'll see the initial A, which stands for applying, and you'll also see the initial S, which stands for separating. Now, this is quite a big subject, so I'm going to go into it slowly. And we're going to do Queen Elizabeth's chart, and you can look and see what you've got in your chart. So, in a nutshell, this term, applying and separating, only applies to aspects. So it's about the aspect from one planet to another. And in an enormous nutshell, applying means the two planets are getting closer together. And guess what separating means? It means that they're beginning to separate in their orbits and the gear and the stuff that they do. Now, the only time that this would become important would be if you were doing a progressed chart or you were doing an orrery chart. For box standard day-to-day astrological analysis, it's not vitally important unless you are progressing someone's chart forwards from their date of birth to a certain point in time, or you're a curious being and you've got Virgo planets, and I do have one. I've got Pluto and Virgo in the first house, so I can tell you about it. So I say it's not vitally important. You don't need to know this to be able to make sense of a chart, but we're going to cover it today. Now, just to make life complex, because astrology can be like that, there are two ways of describing it, and I'm going to quote from various people's books that have taught about it, and only one website. I'm not going to go all over the place with it. And because I had to do some, so you can't Google with a book, you have to sit there and flick the pages. And do you know the thing that drives me the craziest about a hell of a lot of astrology books is there's no index. Pay someone to make an index. Now, I'm quoting from The Only Way to Learn Astrology, Volume 2, Basic Principles by Marion D. March and Joan McEvers. They're brilliant books. They're really good. Can't knock them. she says in there on page 64, under the segment called General Rules and Guidelines for Aspecting. I'll miss the first bit. And number 5 says, an applying aspect is stronger than a waning aspect. Now, waning is the same as separating. So back in the day, those two particular ladies called it applying and waning. I don't think you'll find that by Googling it today. You'll have to Google, if you want to Google, be calling it applying or separating. So she says, an applying aspect is stronger than a waning aspect. For example, applying. The moon is at 10 degrees Taurus, trine Mercury at 16 degrees Virgo. Waning. The moon is at 16 degrees Taurus, trine Mars at 10 degrees Virgo. Okay. So we've got the degree of the moon is less than, the first example, the degree of the moon is less than the degree of Mercury. So we've got 10 degrees for the moon and we've got Mercury 16 degrees in the applying aspect. In the what she's calling waning, we've got the moon at 16 degrees and we've got Mars at 10 degrees. They're both in the same elements, okay, so they're both in Earth sign. She says, in the applying aspect, the moon is moving toward Mercury and is thus said to be applying. In the waning aspect, the moon has moved past Mercury and is thus said to be waning. The faster planet is always listed first, whether applying or waning. The applying aspect shows something you're working towards. The waning aspect shows something that has been recently learned. The relative speed of the planets is shown in lesson 3. The aspecting faster planet is the doer, and the aspected slower planet is the receiver of that action. Now, I'm going to repeat that because it took me 6 million years to work out what she said. So we're just taking the numbers now. The moon's 10 degrees in one sign and Mercury is 16 degrees. So the moon is faster than Mercury. So the moon is going to be going towards Mercury. Yes? As far as aspects go. And it will do in real life. The moon shifts quicker than Mercury. In the second example, the moon is 16 degrees and Mars is 10 degrees. So the moon is now moving away from the aspect. So it's because the moon is going to get bigger, it's going to go 17 degrees, 18 degrees, 19. So it's going further away from the degree of Mars. You with me? I don't know why she's chosen Mars in the second example. That probably makes it more difficult. But if we have, so let's do it the other way around because she's used Mars. I don't know why she's done this. If we do the moon is 10 degrees and Mercury is 16 degrees, the moon is going to get nearer and nearer and nearer to the degree that Mercury's at because you're allowing an orb. Whilst if the moon was 16 degrees, and let's go Mercury down, why she's used Mars, is 10 degrees, you've already got past the degree that the other planet, Mercury, is at. You with me? I hope so. We shall continue so that you understand it a little bit more. This is probably one of the reasons why I haven't used it much, because anything that's going to be even remotely mathematical, my brain freezes and it takes me a while to get there. Hasn't stopped me being an astrologer for 30 plus years. You don't actually need maths. I could do basic maths, 1 and 1 is 2, etc. So let's do another example. So I'm going to make this easy. Now, if we're looking at Queen Elizabeth's chart, in her chart, she's got moon trine to Mercury. So her moon is 12 degrees, 7 minutes, 18 seconds into the sign of Leo. And her Mercury is 4 degrees Aries, 39 minutes and 44. Now, obviously, this is a computer program that does this, and it's rounded it up, down, back to front, whatever. And so it tells you in the little box there, moon to Mercury. It's got the symbol for the trine, and then it's got 7, and it says separating. So remember what we just said about Marian's example with the moon and Mercury are both in fire signs, so that's a trine, lash, 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 lash. But the moon is a bigger number than Mercury is, so therefore that's separating by 7 degrees. Now, I know if you count on from 4 to 12, it's not 7, it's 8, but we have to take into account that we've got some minutes to take into account there. I'm really going to lose the plot if I have to include the minutes, but let's just say they've obviously rounded it up, but that's a separating aspect. So the moon has already gone past the degree that Mercury's at, because Mercury's at 4 degrees. Moon's already shifted past that. So that's why in that box there it says 7s, which is separating. Okay, so that's the degree of one bit. So the faster moving planet in this case is the moon. Now, just to make life difficult, do I want to do the difficult bit? Yeah. No, I'll do the difficult bit in a minute. Let's just do another example and then I'll do the difficult bit. We've got, so we're keeping on the moon column. We've got an in conjunction, not covering that because that's not doing that. Next box down, we've got moon opposition to Mars. So old Queenie had her moon at 12 degrees Leo and she had her Mars at 20 degrees Aquarius. And the number in there is 9. Again, it's done some rounding up, but trust me on this. The aspect there is an opposition, so the moon is 12 degrees and Mars is 20 degrees. So Mars is already a bigger number than the moon is, so that's an applying aspect. So the faster planet is moving towards the other planet, which isn't as fast. Yes? So the first example was separating because it's already got past the point of the aspect. And this one, the first planet, is a lesser degree of numbers to the second planet. So that's an applying. And in her blurb, God help me, I hope I haven't lost the page. She says here that an applying aspect, the moon is moving towards Mercury and is thus said to be an applying. Well, in the Queen's case, she's got separating. So when it's waning, the faster planet's always listed first, whether applying or waning. The applying aspect shows something that you're working towards. So her moon is applying to her Mars, right? The waning aspect, which is her moon to her Mercury, shows something that has been recently learned. The relative speed of the planet is shown in lesson 3. The aspecting faster planet is the doer. So the moon is the doer here, and the aspected slower planet is the receiver of the action. Okay, does that help? Possibly not. Why would I even want to do this? But that's applying and separating. Now, an Astro Wiki, love Astro Wiki. They make it quite easy to understand. And I'll put the links to these so you can read them for yourself. Applying aspect, an aspect which is still in the process of forming, also referred to as an application. Oh my God, we've got another name now. It means that the faster of two planets or other sensitive points such as the ascendant or MC is approaching an exact aspect to the slower moving one. Meaning, in most types of chart interpretation, the applying aspect is considered to be stronger than the separating aspect because the energies are converging and the climax is still approaching. Consequently, aspects formed by transits, directions and progressions are granted a larger orb when in the applicative phase. The effects of a transit can even be observed several degrees before an exact aspect is formed, whereas after the transit planet has passed this point, the effect may wane rather quickly. In horary astrology, a separating aspect, we'll do separating in a minute, I want to go into separating. So that's an applying aspect. So the chart interpretation, it's considered stronger than a separating one. So old Queenie, her moon opposition Mars is a, inverted commas, stronger aspect than her moon trine to her Mercury, because her Mercury and moon, they're separating, and her moon and Mars are applying. Okay, So let's do what they say, separating. So separate an aspect which, though still in orb, has passed the point at which it was exact. An aspect is separating when the faster moving of the two planets has passed this point and is moving away. In modern Western astrology, this distinction is not so important for natal chart interpretation. Hurrah! Hurrah, 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 which is why I've never used it. But in horary astrology, which I don't do a lot of, an aspect is generally considered to be finished once the faster moving planet in aspect is a few minutes past exact. One exception to this rule in horary astrology is when another planet combusts the sun within 8.5 degrees in either direction. Traditionally, in other types of astrology, a separating aspect is considered to be weaker than an applying aspect, in which the faster moving planet is still approaching the point at which the aspect will become exact. I shall also put a link to, on astro.com, the FAQs, and that page is really difficult to find, let me tell you. I wish I'd seen that about a million years ago. And on there, it lets you, it says their charts are legends, the aspect tables for the charts, and in there it's got an A for applying two planets are moving towards an exact angle, and S separating two planets are moving away from exact angle. And unfortunately, in that, they're using lowercase A and S, whilst actually in the flipping charts themselves, they've written them as capital letters. So quite a lot of times when I used to skim past that page and not really pay much attention to it, I didn't really think it was applying this to me now. I think I'm separating all over the place here. Didn't realise that it was talking about what's in the aspect grid. Okay. So what else has the Queen got? You could probably go as far, if you've got the time to do it, to see how many separating and aspecting and separating and applying flipping aspects she's got, and then make a judgment on that. I don't think I would. So just going back to the Queen for a minute, she's got Sun conjunct Chiron. Her Sun is so this is an example of out of sign aspects. Her sun sign is 0 degrees Taurus, 12 minutes 21 seconds. Her Chiron is 28 degrees Aries, 1 minute 5 seconds. So obviously Aries comes before Taurus in the zodiac. Well, it doesn't, the one I use. And so in her little boxes, you go all the way down the box for the sun sign, you'll get to the conjunction symbol and you'll see 2 and separating, because that's a separating thing, because it's moved past being exactly exact. The sun has moved past, because in this case the sun is going to move faster than Chiron. Now that's the other thing you need to know. So this is the making it complex thing. So I'm going to quote you the speeds of the planets and the orders that they go in. Just so we're doing this in this podcast, just so we know, we might never use this ever again, but I do want to answer this particular student's question in more detail. Yeah, I couldn't find this. I was like, why did I read that a minute ago? So this is the speed in the order. So like the fastest planets to the slowest planets. So the moon takes 28 days to complete one cycle. Mercury takes 88 days to complete one orbit of the sun. Venus takes 224.5 days for one orbit of the sun. The sun takes a year to complete the cycle of the zodiac. Mars takes 22 months, almost 2 years to complete one cycle of the zodiac, because it's 24 months and 2 years, but it's almost 2 years, so 22 months. Jupiter takes about 12 years for one cycle, about one sign per year. Saturn takes 28 to 30 years for one cycle. Uranus takes 84 years. Neptune takes 165. Pluto takes 248 years, but it varies a teeny bit. So going from fastest to slow, we've got Moon, Mercury, Venus, then the Sun, then Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. Okay, so that's the order of the speed of the planets, because you'll be taking, be taking those into account when you're deciding whether which is the faster planet and which is the slower planet. With me? Now, so on horary astrology, I'm not doing any horary astrology, so I'm just quoting from Auntie Lewis' lovely book, Horary Astrology Plain and Simple. I'm going to probably complain to him one day about it plain and simple. It probably seems plain and simple to him. But I think I got to chapter, where did I get into it when I first read it? It hasn't got that many chapters in there. Then I would go at him. It's not plain. I think I got to something like, that was it, chapter 8. And it was like my brain had completely fried by then, because he's telling us that this person did it this way, but that person did it that way, apart from the person that did it the other way. And it's like, I can't cope with this. Right, we're now on page 81. Applying aspects only. So he's been already talking about the aspects of the guts of the chart. The horary chart contains potential aspects between significators. By following these potential aspects to their completion, we can determine the outcome of the question. Applying aspects are those in which the faster planet is approaching the exact angular relationship to a slower planet, as specified by the aspect. If the faster applying planet is in direct motion, it is in an earlier degree than the slower planet which it approaches. If the faster planet is retrograde, it can approach the slower planet from a later degree by backward motion. In the latter case, both planets are approaching each other by mutual application. Applying aspects signify future events. In horary astrology, we use applying aspects because horary deals with the future course of a specific act or decision. Separating aspects are those that have already occurred, and the planets are moving away from the angle defined by the aspect. We use separating aspects when we want to know what led up to the question. We saw the usefulness of separating aspects in the chart for Sarah's baby. The recently completed square between Mercury, the baby, and Jupiter, the ruler of the baby's 6th house of illness, coincided with Sarah's awareness that something had gone wrong the previous day and in fact identified the time of the baby's death. This is one of the reasons that he wrote the book, because Sarah had asked him about what happened with her baby. Okay. Planet speed, faster planets apply to slow ones. In conventional astrology, the faster planet always applies to the slower one. Muhammad goes to the mountain. The mountain does not come to Muhammad. When describing aspects, we always name the faster planet first. Thus, the moon applies to Mercury, but Mercury does not apply to the moon unless Mercury is retrograde and approaches the moon in apparent backward motion. The Queen has Saturn retrograde and Neptune retrograde. And, we've got a separating aspect between Saturn and Uranus. So Saturn is 24 degrees Scorpio and her Uranus is 27 degrees Pisces. So they're both in water signs and they form a nice trine. There's 3 degrees between them, which there is. 27 minus 24 is 23. Ooh, that one works. And it's separating because the faster one is Saturn and he's retrograding. So he's going to go 24, 23, 22, 21. But that precise moment in time is 24. So that's a separating aspect. So that's a demonstration of a retrograde one, which is what he's just talking about. Please email me if it doesn't make sense, and we'll get him on the show and ask him. Muhammad's retrograde applies to the moon. The approximate average daily speed of the planets are listed here in order from fastest to slowest. So he's got a little chart there. In Table 5, note the mean values, not the average daily motion of the fastest and slowest times used by Lilly for Mercury, blah, 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 and he's quoting this, that, and the other. Bear in mind that these are only average daily speeds and planets may move faster or slower than the rates listed. When a planet's stationary, it appears to be standing still. When retrograde, it has an apparent backward motion. In these cases, you can follow the planetary motion in ephemeris to determine whether the stationary or retrograde planet is approaching an aspect with another planet. In addition, Pluto sometimes travels inside the orbit of Neptune, and Pluto then moves faster than Neptune with reference to the Earth. In this century, Pluto is within the orbit of Mercury from Jan 79 till March 99. As with retrograde planets, it's easiest to follow the aspects of these outermost planets in an ephemeris. Well, yes, it would be, because trying to do that in your head, you'd lose the will to live. So he's got here average daily motions, and then he's got geocentric average daily motions degrees. So the moon is 13 degrees, 10 minutes, 36 seconds. The moon does that in a day. Mercury does 0 degrees, 59 minutes and 8 seconds. Venus does 0 degrees, 59 minutes and 8 seconds in a day. Oh, look, Mercury and Venus move at the same speeds. Not all the time, I don't think. Or maybe they do. The Sun is 59 minutes and 8 seconds. Mars is 0 degrees, 31 minutes, 27 in a day. Jupiter is 0 degrees, 4 minutes, 59 seconds in a day. Saturn is 0 degrees, 2 minutes, 1 second in a day. And then he's got how long that is on the Earth, which I've just read out to you from Marianne's book. So there we go. We've got separating. We've got applying. Those are the random S's and A's and numbers that are in that grid at the bottom right-hand side of any chart that you make on astro.com if you're using astro.com. I don't know if they're on other websites, actually, astro.com, because the guy that computer programmed it all, he's called Alois, never pronounced his name, probably Trendle. He's a computer programmer, so he loves his numbers. He could do the numbers thing, even though he's a Pisces. It always makes me laugh. He's a Pisces and he could do computer programming. He must be a genius. So have a look on your chart, see if you've got any applying or separating. Remember, of course, that as we've been told, if it's applying, it's stronger. That aspect is stronger than if it's separating, because look, it's weak. It is all maths. It is to do with orbits and speeds. So I hope that's helped, and we've solved the mystery of the grid at the bottom of the chart. And I hope you have a fab week, and I'll be back next week. Bye-bye now.